Hello from Germany. During the next 60 minutes, you will hear from 15 young people, including me. We belong to a German organization called Aktion, Sühnezeichen, Friedensdienste, or in English, ARSP, which is short for Action, Reconciliation, Service for Peace. ARSP was founded after the Second World War by members of the Protestant Church. They were convinced that the first step towards reconciliation had to be made by the perpetrators and their descendants. They would have to ask the nations who suffered under the Nazis to be allowed to do something good in their countries. Today, ARSP volunteers work in all kinds of projects in Europe, Israel, and the United States. They support Holocaust survivors in retirement homes, give tours at memorial sites, or work in archives and museums. Now, young people from Poland and Ukraine can also take part in the program, volunteering in Germany and Great Britain. Sadly, the outbreak of the coronavirus has prevented us from continuing our voluntary services. However, we still feel committed to the idea and the values that ARSP represents. Each of us has thought of a word that is connected to remembrance, or for us describes what it means to remember and why it is essential to do so. We would like to tell you the stories behind those expressions, why they are meaningful to us, and what they have to do with our experiences during the last 8 months. This will be followed by a reading of names to honor victims of different genocides. You will now see a little introduction video in which we present you all our words. Thank you. My name is Laura, and for me, the words to teach and to learn are closely linked to remembrance. Many of those who witnessed the Holocaust never in their lifetime forgot and will forget what they experienced, what they heard, saw, and felt. In January, I heard Eva Schloss speak at the Jewish Museum in London. She talked about how she experienced the liberation of Auschwitz as a prisoner. She and her mother survived. Her mother would later marry Anne Frank's father, making Eva her stepsister. Eva's descriptions were so vivid, and she remembers so many small details that some are still stuck in my head. She recalled that when the Red Army approached the camp, she mistook the soldiers for bears because it was the middle of winter and they were wrapped in furs. So yes, witnesses will and do remember. It is crucial to remember. We must remember in order to keep our vow, never again. But how about those who haven't seen the atrocities of the Holocaust with their own eyes? Those who were born after the Second World War? How about young people like me and the generations that will come after us? You cannot remember something you don't know anything about. That is why, for me, the words to teach and to learn, in German, lehren und lernen, are central in this matter. There are many ways to learn about the Holocaust. You can be taught about it at school, by friends, family members, survivors, and witnesses, like Eva Schloss. Or you can teach yourself. You can read books and testimonies, visit museums, archives, and memorial sites. You can watch films and search the internet. Since September last year, I have been volunteering at the Wiener Holocaust Library in London. The Wiener Holocaust Library is the world's oldest archive that collects and preserves material on the Holocaust and the Nazi era. 10,000 of books and pamphlets, original documents and photographs are stored in the library's basement. This huge collection is accessible for everyone. The library also hosts events and workshops, creates exhibitions and digital resources. I think institutions like the Wiener Holocaust Library play a very important role when it comes to teaching younger generations and giving them the opportunity to learn, especially since we will soon not be able to learn directly from survivors and witnesses anymore. I hope that in this way, future generations will also continue to remember, so that the events of the Holocaust will never be forgotten and will never repeat themselves. Thank you for listening. Next, Bruno will speak about the word responsibility.
Responsibility, Verantwortung. Why should I care? What does it matter? Stuff like that is happening all the time anyways. When we're talking about genocide, it is very easy to think about it as something far away, whether that distance comes from time or place. However, it is incredibly important that we never forget what genocide really is. It is a crime against humanity. Crime against humanity is not only a legal term, but also a very fitting characterization of its nature. Genocide is a crime committed against the human community as a whole. It affects all of us. As human beings, we have the responsibility to take care of one another and to strive for a better world where we protect the most vulnerable and live together in peace, embracing the differences in faith, beliefs, ethnicity, and opinions that make us human. We are 7 billion people that for some reason ended up on this planet, the only place in the universe that we call home. And despite this miracle, despite the incredible challenges that humanity overcame during the history of its existence, we still can't manage to stand united. Humanity is capable of performing incredible, amazing acts of kindness and creativity. But it is the exact same cognitive power that enables us to commit atrocities that go beyond imagination. The Holocaust was the most defining moment in the last 100 years of my country's history. For humanity's sake, people said, never again. Regardless of that pledge, genocides happened all across the world, just as they did before the Holocaust. Cambodia, Rwanda, or Yugoslavia are just some examples. Every major religion expresses humanity's longing for peace and charity. The only thing keeping us from reaching this goal that all of us strive to accomplish is humanity itself. And that is why each and every one of us has the responsibility to do their best to achieve that goal. The abilities we have been granted with can be put to use for good as well as evil. A lot of those that champion efforts against genocide are people that have been or are right now affected by it. We should be incredibly thankful for their efforts. But that does not free all of us who are not affected from our shared responsibility towards humanity. Only if we combine our efforts, we can ensure a better future for all of humanity. It is hard work that seems to strive, it is hard work to work towards a utopian world. We should never forget that even if a utopia is something we might never reach, it is still something inherently good. It is well worth to try to get as close to it as we possibly can. That is why we should always remember our past and be aware of our present. The future is ours to create. It is our responsibility. Next up, Christina, talking about courage.
Hi everybody, my name is Christina and I'm making my voluntary service in Germany, in Dachau, and at Dachau, former concentration camp, now it's no more concentration camp, no more outside. I'm always working with history and with biographies of former prisoners. So I really would like to introduce you one German word, Zivilcourage or Bürgermut, so it will be translated like moral courage. I have chosen this word because I'm associating this word with the story of one prisoner who came from Ukraine, and I also am going to introduce you this word. After that, and then I'm going to introduce you the definition of this word. So, moral courage is the courage to take action for moral reasons despite the risk of adverse consequences. Courage is required to take action when one has doubts or fears about the consequences. It's also required physical courage when the consequences are punishment or other bodily peril. And I'm associating this word with one Ukrainian prisoner. His name is Nikolai Sergeyevich Adamchik, and he was born on 5th of March 1924. So, after the occupation in Ukraine in 1941, the Germans, the National Socialists, decided to send young people as forced labor to the German concentration camp because they needed that. And at the age of 17 years old, he also was sent. He was sent firstly to the Frankfurt am Main. After that, he was hired to the Wetzel railway station. After that, he was sent to the outside concentration camp of Gießen, and there he joined French resistance organization. As he reported, they were working at the railway station, and they knew very well which wagons and what they were transporting, which train was going to France. They opened wagon stamps, unlocked the carriage doors, and put the volunteers in, French and Poles, so that they could get to the France and join the French resistance movement. It's like real moral courage. After that, unfortunately, the organization was detected. He was sent firstly to one concentration camp not far from their border between Germany and France. After that, also to Buchenwald concentration camp and Dachau concentration camp. But at the end, he was awarded with the Order of Partisan due to his diversity activity. And of course, he had really good life. And now I'm going to give her turn to Nora with her word difficulties and complexity.
Thank you, Christina. In the course of my service for peace, I found that remembrance can be closely linked with difficulties, or vanskeligheter, as you say it in Norwegian. I did my service for peace at Lundheim, a boarding school in the south of Norway, which is attended by both students with and without disabilities. At one point during my service, I was supposed to present ARSP and talk about its work, as well as why I was doing the service for peace in the first place. Political engagement was a huge part of it for me, but as I was working in the environment of the school in such a peaceful country as Norway, I began to unsee the link to the Nazi crimes. In contrast to many other projects, mine did not have a direct link to the time of the Second World War. And while, yes, the little village where I lived was once also occupied by the Nazis, nowadays, for the people there, it seemed rather unimportant. History had made its course. It was no different there than in the rest of Norway. So when the time came to present ARSP, it was hard for me to get a grasp of what I wanted to talk about. And while I was preparing for the presentation, thinking about what to say, the truth sort of hit me. The disabled youth I worked with had a possibility of being deported and killed during the time of the Second World War. Weirdly, it was hard for me to see that before, as I had made friends in the people I nursed. It was a truth I did not want to admit, not think about. The presentation was supposed to be happening in front of the whole school, 76 people, some with disabilities, some without. Some of which I guess have not been confronted much with the Nazi crimes before, while also being very sensible about similar topics. It felt unfair to me to just stand in front of a group of people that the school treated completely equal and then talk about how half of the group might have been killed due to the disabilities 80 years ago. So, what did I do? I talked to a few people and then decided to go for it. It was a truth I couldn't deny, one of the most important aspects of my work there. From that experience, I learned the act of remembrance is rarely easy, often even very difficult. Remembrance can be uncomfortable and in some cases even has to be. The next one speaking is Marta, who is going to speak about the aspect of listening.
Thank you, Nora. So here you can read the word słuchać. It's Polish and translated it means to listen, and in German zuhören. This word became more and more important for me in the context of remembrance during my time as a volunteer with ARSP in Krakow, Poland. In Krakow, I worked with Holocaust survivors, and once a week I visited a really talkative old lady. She taught me about a lot of things, about life stuff, about maybe so-called random stuff, about faily things, but she also told me about her history and how she and her family suffered under the Nazis and how they were persecuted because they were Jews. And sometimes I was sitting there and I was just speechless and I didn't know what to answer her because I didn't know what is right in this moment and what I can say because I was shocked about those cruelty which happened to her, and I didn't find the words for it. And also sometimes I couldn't answer because I was not that eloquent in Polish, but also when I couldn't answer her in a really proper way, I saw that she enjoyed that I was there and that I listened to her. So she told me things again and again because she just wanted me to be there and to hear her story and to listen and to truly listen to her. So that's what I want to encourage my generation to listen to people who survived the Holocaust or people who suffer under racism or under anti-Semitism or who are victims of other kind of discrimination. So that's the thing. We have to listen, then we have to hear, and then we have to change things. So thank you for listening to me. And the next is Kati, and she will talk about trauma.
Hello, so I will talk about trauma, which is in the translation trauma. And I chose the word which is actually the same beyond languages. And that trauma is a phenomenon that plays a huge role in the action of commemoration of genocide. Is something which I learned during my service for peace in the USA, where I was in Cincinnati, Ohio, where I worked with Holocaust survivors and spent a lot of time with them. And I was conscious of the fact that they were survivors of a terrible period of time, but I was not really conscious of the fact that most of them were still suffering from this experience they had gone through as children or teenagers. Of course, some are more traumatized than others are less, but I think what they all had in common is that they tried to put it away or let grass grow over it, which was not possible, which I found out when I came, because also me as being German, it reminded them, maybe my accent, maybe something else, it reminded them of this period of time, and then it cracked open like a wound, which has not healed before. And they also needed to talk about it with anyone they were close with. And one of them even said to me, yeah, sometimes it just all has to come out. There we come to this aspect of listening. Marta, thank you very much. That was inspiring. So yeah, what I thought is like, what do these dialogues have in common with the culture of remembrance in general? What I think is that traumas like show us that we also have to keep in mind those who are still living. When I was in school, I was involved with the Stolpersteiner project, and what we did is honoring those who have died, which is very important. But what I was not conscious about is this trauma, what I mentioned. And focusing on those who are still living. What does that mean? So I think that in the US, I experienced a more individualized and more emotionalized way of commemoration, which is, for example, shown in the whole new established Holocaust and Humanities Center in Cincinnati, which is based on individual stories of local survivors. And I think this is a very powerful way of commemorating because it actually reaches people. So what I think is that the trauma actually can help us prevent injustice because we understand which effects it has on also generations back. So yeah, that's why I think we need to be upstanders. So, and now Anna will talk about the trans presence.
Thank you, Kati. In Czech, the word present is known as dnešek. I know it may seem a little bit odd at first that I want to talk about the present instead of the past, because remembrance means to take a look at past times. We remember situations and people, and we think of people who are gone, to let them live in our hearts at least. But we also remember to influence our present and to improve it. I have worked at the memorial of the former National Socialist concentration camp Theresienstadt, and I talked to survivors of the Holocaust who were detained there. One survivor talks with many students in the Czech Republic and also in Germany about her experiences of anti-Semitism in the 1930s in Prague and about the internment in Theresienstadt. She travels a lot in Germany and the Czech Republic and talks to so many students. And after those conversations, the students have many things to discuss. They talk about her experiences, her great attitude, and they also discuss their possibilities of social or political activism. Impressed by the words of the survivor, many students realize that there are many little things they can do to prevent and to fight against racism and anti-Semitism. Many notice that history is more than the past, that remembrance is also what we do in the present. They talk about the importance of words, which words we, the people around us, and politicians use. They get more aware how words can get used and how actions, as small and unimportant they seem, are perceived. And maybe, most importantly, the students notice how important it is to think about such social interactions. The awareness of anti-Semitism and racism in our current society becomes a topic they talk about with their friends, with their family, and in doing so they spread awareness. The survivor tells the students at the end of her talk that she knows that nobody can change what happened, but that she believes that anybody can change how we see the past, and according to that, if and how we take action today. With our knowledge of the past, with our attempt to understand, remembrance is more than the past. It is about today and tomorrow, about our actions and our words. It is not about the fact that we can't change what happened, but about our influence we have in the present. Thank you for listening. After me, it's Florin. He will talk about tradition.
Thank you very much, Anna. As she already said, I will talk about tradition, and I think an important part of commemorating is the periodically recurring of symbolic acts and gestures, short establishment of traditions or tradice in the language of my host country. During my volunteer year at Memorial Leticia in the Czech Republic, I encountered two types of traditions for commemorating. The first one, the state-organized commemoration acts, were often framed by a military chapel, playing slow march music, while prominent people, survivors, and soldiers were laying down bouquets. Those official memorial events are, of course, a useful way to institutionalize the remembrance of the Nazi victims and a reminder to the current society and government to fight fascism and racism. However, they are also easily misused by governments for self-staging. During the communist era, the annual commemoration act for the victims of Leticia, the village which was completely annihilated by the Nazis in 1942, was more or less just a huge image cultivation by the Communist Party. After the Velvet Revolution, the new democratic Czech Republic tried to depolitize the culture of remembrance but self-explaining, it is not possible to completely detach political ideas from remembrance culture, and I dare say that that is a good thing. But second kind of tradition was extending beyond this kind of state-organized memory culture, and the people of Leticia did also went an own personal way to remember the victims of their village, which is still kind of formal, but refreshing different from the state-organized way of commemorating. I will tell you more about this, but first I have to shortly explain what happened in Leticia. German fascists annihilated the village and massacred most of the inhabitants in a brutal and arbitrary revenge action for the assassination of the deputy vice protector Rainer Teidwig in occupied Czech territory in 1942. After the war, just a few women and children survived, and they were supported by the Czechoslovakian government, which built a new village for them next to the old one. The old area of the annihilated village was turned to a memorial site, and the old village was connected to the new village by the plantation of a rose garden. And exactly in this rose garden, the inhabitants established a tradition of holding marriage ceremonies. But those ceremonies aren't just simple marriage ceremonies, those ceremonies are of a symbolic nature. So firstly, there are a strong sign saying to the Nazis, here we are, you failed in your aspirations of erasing us and our village from the landscape. And secondly, they symbolically connect the past, represented by the old village site, with the present, represented by the new village, and the future, which arises from the new founded family. And I can hardly imagine a better way of commemorating, connecting the past with the future in such a personal way, and indirectly saying, we all have the right to form a family, we all have the right to live. And it is basically a form of vivid kind of memory culture. People of Leticia actively decided to include this tradition in their life based on their free will, and I just love that. Next one is Jana with the word individuality.
Thank you, and now we are talking about Eigenart, or individuality. So when people arrive to the camp, changeless procedure carries on. Their personal things, like rings or photos or something else, were taken away from them. They didn't have anything that could help recognize their personality, their individuality. Their heads were shaved, and they had to be naked and disinfected. After that, they receive camp clothes, and all of their personal data were written to their personal register. So they receive numbers, and from that moment, they become numbers. They don't have names anymore. Camp administration did everything in order to destroy their individuality. Enormous amount of work, life conditions, constant punishments were developed especially for this reason. For surviving was extremely important to save your life habits, beliefs, and culture, at least a bit, and share it with others. Zeli Munich, who was arrested in Austria and taken to the camp in Magdeburg, shares her memories and tells about her attempts to save their individuality and stay strong. She says that at the camp she had a friend who said them, we need to dress nicely. Try to do it in order not to be depressed. When someone of us is depressed, it affects others. We even shortened our robes, can you imagine? Says Zeli. We got so inappropriate clothes, we could hardly wear it. And a trial that took place in Jerusalem 1961 had brightly showed that people who were in the camps were imagined like a fantasy group, and no one really saw them as individuals. So for showing this, more than 100 people were brought to the court in order to share their memories. After that, Israeli prosecutor's office achieved one of the most important goals. They showed this is not just a spirit, just like imaginary group of people. All of them are individualities who struggled and who survived. Thank you for listening. Next, you will hear from Margot, who will talk about trust.
Thank you, Jana. And like Jana said, my word is trust. And in German, that would be Vertrauen. So, during my time abroad, I volunteered at the Ulmer Holocaust Museum and Education Center in Skokie, just outside of Chicago. My work at IMEC was mainly about remembrance. As part of an amazing education team, I was able to support our mission of making Never Again a reality. To reach this goal, remembering the atrocities committed in World War II is a necessity. Thus, we help students learn about the Holocaust and to bring them together with survivors. Through the experiences they make at our museum, we help them remember, and they can help others remember too. Allowing me, a 19-year-old high school graduate from Germany, to take such an important role in their organization required an enormous amount of trust on the side of my colleagues. Without their trust, I would not be able to remember all the stories I've been told. And they would have not inspired me to go out and help others remember too. During my cherished time with the survivors at the museum, many became my friends. Trust is the basis of any friendship. Through our friendship, I was lucky enough to hear their stories, and one recurring belief that kept them alive was trust. Trust that complete strangers only wanted to help you makes a deportation. Survivors who recently had learned how cruel people can really be had to trust people they'd never met before to help them guide to safety. Some helped the survivors take by secret paths and move together with Germany. Families only survived because their parents trusted a completely unknown family to pick their child up from translation. Faced with a horrifying choice, either keeping their children with them, facing an uncertain future, or putting them on a train to live in a different country with a different family, they chose to trust people they've never even met before. In many cases, this trust saved their children's lives. Other survivors who were picking you had to trust their families and sometimes their communities to not turn them in. Given the incentives by the Nazis and the punishment they faced, this trust certainly was very fragile. Still, it was absolutely necessary. For survivors interned in concentration camps, trusting became especially hard. Seeing death and destruction on a daily basis is encouraging and an insane display of the voice that human nature is capable of. Still, there were many forms of trust that helped them persevere. Trust in God, the trust in each other, and the trust that as bad as today may be, tomorrow will be better. All of these forms of trust helped survivors during the Holocaust. After World War II, they faced another huge challenge, starting to trust again. Trust in the country, trust in people, and trusting life to lead you where you need to be. Next will be Rebecca, and she will talk about activism.
Thank you, Margot. In German, my word activism is pretty similar. It means Aktivismus, aktiv werden. And for me, it also includes to engage, which is sich engagieren in German. I do my voluntary service for the European Union of Jewish Students in Brussels, an umbrella organization of Jewish student unions from all over Europe. Through my project, I had the chance to participate in a seminar in Yad Vashem in December. There, I heard the story of Michael Kichka. He told us how it was for him to live in the second generation. Only as a grown-up, he heard about his father's story, who kept silent about it for years. I was very moved by the way Michael Kichka told us his story. Henry Kichka, his father, survived 9 camps in 38 months and died a few days ago at the age of 94 in Belgium. From the survivors I spoke with during my voluntary service, I heard again and again that we should pass on their stories. This will even be more necessary when there are no survivors left. Activism to me means also that I want to pass on the story of Michael and Henry Kichka, so it will never be forgotten. The Holocaust must never happen again, and it is our responsibility to ensure that. And there's one thing that became clear to me in the course of these encounters. Never again must not be just an empty phrase that is said a few times a year at commemoration ceremonies. Never again also means that each and every one of us will speak up in daily life against all forms of hatred and will engage ourselves for a more peaceful and just world. Thank you for listening. Now you'll hear from Mariana, who will talk about the word to believe.
Thank you very much, Giuseppe. And my word is to believe. Ukrainian word is вірити, Polish version uwierzyć. For me, to believe is to do something impossible when you don't have the strength and capabilities. I realized that when I meet with the Holocaust survivors in my volunteer organization and hear from them their life stories. And I want to tell you about Lydia Maximovich and her story of belief and hope. Lydia Maximovich, in fact, Lyudmila Bocharova, was ended in the Auschwitz-Birkenau camp in 1943, together with mother and grandparents, when she was only 3 years old. Immediately upon arrival, her grandparents were taken to the crematorium. Lydia and mother were separated into different barracks. Mrs. Lydia mentions about her fears in a barracks because she was a test subject in a Mengeles labs. She didn't remember her mother in the face, only food from her hands, because Anna Bocharova, Lydia's mother, risked her life every day and brought food for her daughter. Before the liberation of the camp, Neva's mother came to Lydia in barracks and several times repeated her name and region because she believed that after the war she would be able to find her daughter. This was the last time when Lydia saw her mother. After the liberation of the concentration camp, Lydia was adopted by a new family in Oświęcim, and actually the girl has named like Lydia because she forgot her real name. New parents tell that Lydia's mother was shot dead during the death march from the Auschwitz-Birkenau camp. When Lydia was a teenager, she decided to find out her origin. From the two number of her arm, she found her real name. But most of all, she was sure that her biological mother was alive. From the Auschwitz-Birkenau camp, Anna Bocharova was sent to the Ravensbrück and after to the Bergen-Belsen. After the war, she moved to the Ukrainian city in Donetsk, USSR. And every year, Anna Bocharova didn't stop to research for her daughter. In 1962, when Lydia had 17, together with parents, they came to Moscow to meet with the biological mother. When Anna Bocharova saw her adult daughter, she lost consciousness. Lydia Maximovich recalls that their meeting has become a symbol of belief for millions of people who were looking for their relative after the war. So for us now to believe that all hate we can convert into peace. And thank you so much for your listening. Next, you will hear from Amelie, who will talk about diversity.
Thanks for introducing me, Mariana. I did a voluntary service in Norway in a school for deaf children with disabilities and additional diagnosis. RSIP supports projects in Norway because there were huge invasions by the Nazis, especially in the northern Finnmark. In Norway, most peace workers from RSIP work on social projects for people with disabilities because this group of people was persecuted by the Nazis and labeled as not worthy living. This is the main point where I chose the word diversity. In Norwegian, that's called mangfold. In German, we say Vielfalt, and in Norwegian Sign Language, it's called mangfold. As you see, there's already a great diversity within the languages that I dealt with during my stay, and I really enjoyed this huge variety of cultures and people. But one of the key features of the Nazi ideology and many other genocides that people wanted to live in as less diversity as possible. This process often begins with picking one perfect stereotype and fighting everything else. I think that's because the biggest fears come from the unknown, and people rarely know minorities very well, so instead of getting to know them and finding out that they are no danger and building empathy for them, society has sometimes chosen to rather eliminate them to get rid of this fear. Today, we know that this is everything but a good solution, but we need to face the origin of the problem to find a strong, permanent and safe solution to face these irrational fears and of diversity that many people seem to have. Because if we don't, it will be very difficult to prevent other genocides from happening. During my stay in Norway, I realized very deeply that treating everyone with the same respect and openness is the only right way to approach every person. In theory, that's also the fundament of our modern beliefs and laws, but sadly, the daily life and private opinion often differ quite a lot from this. And the fear of the unknown, the foreign, or just the different is what enables genocides like the Holocaust, for example, in the first place. It applies just as well for different ethnicities as physical or mental abilities, age, culture, sexuality, political opinion, or other characteristics. So we really need to get to know each other, accept the diversity, and learn to appreciate it, because actually, as I experienced during my stay in Norway, it's a very beautiful thing and can enrich people and communities a lot. I learned so much from the students there that I could never have imagined before, and I'm so grateful for it. I wish that this will not only be a personal experience, but will also be offered more and more to wider societies through inclusion, acceptance, and other curious people. And of course, because of all the horror that happened, but also simply because it's best for everyone, we fight for genocides to never happen again. As a last input, Emma and Franka will read out names from people that died in genocides. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Emily. My name is Emma, and during my service for peace with ARSP, I worked at the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, D.C. Since the dead can no longer speak for themselves, we keep the memory of them alive by reading their names loud out now. Orlando Abel Saracho. Gahimi Calliope. Juan Domingo Nadal. Son of Mutir Nasa I. Daboristic. Fadi Kabalan. Ricardo José Machado. Andon Bagdasarian. Al-Sheikh Ibrahim. Moses Dervatanian. Alrik Hario. S. Edin Nur Hidabi. Mohammad Hussein Mailavi. Anas Abdurrahman Al-Akher. Stephen Tomasevic. Muhamika. Mohammed Ahmad Diab Al-Nammos. Mindil Neugut. Abd Al-Rahman Husef Al-Nuyum. Smailovic Hedib. Orik Munib. Fevzie Feyzullahu. Ismail Ayot. Nidal Kreisch. Leticia Andrea Veraldi. Cirilo Janakovsik. Jette Denwan. Bol Banang. Semenovic Hasan. Hamchik Rizzo. Ammar Hasan Al-Awad. Fatwa Abd al-Mawla Masad. Nazaramba Theogene. Atar Ammar Weiß. Ahmetovic Edin. Selevich Ibis. Lahid Saban. Jakob Wertheimer. Hagob Israelien. Dudic Ibu. Shadi Khador Al-Sheikh. Kakekuhu. Uwangarambe. Levon Atar Mikreyan. Shulim Berengut. Slomo Sindeles. Afdik Smile. Nitzir Sinani. Mohammad Abdulaziz Al-Ismani. Sadri Demiri. Anas Jamel Al-Amer. Weiger Kleitzer. Maman Hoy Fatuma. Manuel Tillmann. Luzi Musliu. Carlos Alberto Labolita. Musa Isa. Sulcik Almir. Jakob Stern. Anas Mahmoud Sultana. Taha Abdul Karim Abbas. Mukagazana Beatrice. Mifta Osmankai. Ayman Mayet Bubensch. Jankel Kleimann. Allah Abd al-Rahman Mohammed. Ahmad Khaled al-Nasserat. Khalid al-Jabal. Matameza Beatrice. Kukalik Misrat. Smiljana Petrovic. Mohammad Ahmad Supi Al-Maruf. Mani Khani. And now the next you hear from Franca.
Manya China. Kakarama Bufire. Arthur Torst. Rachel Slosberg. Miklos Jelinek. Yichak Hirsch. Amani Adib Danon. Bashkim Domi. Mohammad Ahmad Al-Ramadan. Abdul Mavla Saleh. Meverkande Vital. Tuj Shulpuk. Vukicha Piade. Louis Believ Dieu. George Riyad Iskandinavi, Minani, Sambok Sambun, Afazari Felix, Hasanovich Hasan, Ramadan Amitai, Humayun Kabir, Dutsik Simir, Chaike Yurt, Ahmad Shubak, Maher Omar Katmuzi, Hasan Bitik, Mohammad Hussein Al-Daif, Muchik Sevat, Fuad Mansur Al-Zwes, Bejik Yunus, Noman Demolle, Rwabuzingira Augustin, Glent Krasniki, Karl Schwarz, Mehmedovich Omer, Trankimjoy, Heinrich Huppert, Karundi Marie. Thank you for taking the time to listen to our stories of remembrance and the name of genocide victims. It is incredibly important to keep the memory of these victims alive. We say never again and will keep remembering. Thank you. Together we remember.
Thank you for such an incredible, poignant program. I think it means so much that each of you have had such special experiences with different institutions that do work in this field and how it's impacted your lives and perhaps will influence the types of careers you take and the work that you do and your willingness to be upstanders in Europe and around the world. And I really, really look forward to connecting the Together Remember Youth Action Network with the work that ASF is doing in Europe. So again, thank you so, so much. I hope you're able to tune in for a little while longer today. And again, yeah, thank you. Definitely Together We Remember across the Atlantic.